Okay, the scene. It is September 1929. The Depression has just started, and you get this 4-page letter from a company in Texas called Helioplane Company of America. And it says basically, would you risk a few dollars for a chance to become a millionaire within 6 months? A new flying ship is being built. Air travel is to be revolutionized with the first successful flight of the Hackenberger Helioplane. There are millions in the making for the air-minded who are willing to back this invention now. It describes this letter. It's quite 4-page long. It's a lot of information. It says that this, I've taken a few quotes out of it, where it says, mighty propellers are placed in front of the lower wings that it may rise in the air without the usual long, fast run on the ground. It's the most needed invention in all history. Yeah, it can take off from your own backyard or roof. This is also from the letter. The only opportunity you ever had to be a millionaire, or will you risk a small amount of money to make tens of thousands or millions? This opportunity will never come to you alone. Again, well, he's offering these direct assignments into the patent rights. Each assignment is for 1/100th of 1% of the patent rights and costs $100. So there's 10,000 assignments available. And it explains that people who are offered the chance at the Bell telephone patent, they laughed at the idea. And also Henry Ford, people who didn't invest in Henry Ford, or people who did in the early days, they made lots of money. Well, Hackenberger may be laughed at by some of the big airplane factories who have millions of dollars invested in the making of the big, clumsy, blind devils of the air. I like this, which may become junk 6 months after the Helioplane makes its first flight. Well, guess what? They're more about the plane. It's light in weight, evenly balanced, and completely controlled, eliminating the great hazard to life and property. It can be maneuvered in the air with the motor shut off. It may travel for miles for a suitable landing. Well, so you're excited. You can see the potential for this Helioplane. In the stock market crash. So guess what? You make it. You make the decision, you go for it. And make it easy for you. The shipping address is in Windsor. And you get a postal money order and drop it in the mailbox on May 18th.
Is that Windsor,
Surprise!
Maine, or Windsor, England, or?
Windsor, Ontario.
Oh, okay.
Here's the envelope. Surprise! It's a return to sender. With a wonderful little reason for a non-delivery checked. So that was May 18th. A couple of days later, the Windsor post office sends it back to Edmonton. And this was a Mr. Douglas who sent this. And the actual overprint one here reads, person addressed is believed to be engaged in a business of a fraudulent character.
I like that it's the Company of America, but it's based in Canada. That's a little odd.
Well, you'll find out why in a minute.
Okay.
You remember now, you were skeptic at first, but the Windsor post office staff knew something you did not. So you do some more checking. And back in December already, this is 5 months or 6 months before you wrote your letter, or Mr. Major, whatever, Major wrote his letter. In the New York Times, there's a headline that says, Helioplane shares face inquiry. The promotion circulars assert that a child can handle the new craft more safely than an automobile. Well, okay. Deputy Attorney General Watson Washburn, in charge of the State Bureau of Securities, announced last night that as a result of numerous complaints, had begun an investigation here of the claims made by the person selling the patent rights for the Helioplane Company of America. Well, okay, then you do a little more checking. How the USPS gets involved, your postal service. Well, New York Times, February 12th, Washburn issues the second request to the Postal Service to investigate. He sends complaints against them. And bottom line, the Bureau of Securities described Davis as a man who has promoted 17 companies in 7 years, none of which ever lived up to his promises or paid a dividend.
Nice.
So the Davis was the signature on the bottom. I didn't mention it. Davis was the signature on the bottom of page 4 of the letter. Aha! That is why the money was to be sent to the Windsor, because the US Postal Service was already wise. They already had it figured out. That's why they wanted the money sent to Canada. There's the reason. So you had to think about what else you could do with this $100 that you were going to invest. You had just some other possibilities. Nylon had just been invented. Penicillin had just come onto the market. But the second part of this story is just, it's not simple. Who was this prospective investor? C.H. Douglas in Edmonton. Well, he actually was Major C.H. Douglas, a British engineer, an economist, and he was promoting this social credit monetary system to the Canadian government in 1923. It led to the formation of the Social Credit Party, both in Canada, in Alberta, and in Australia. In Australia, the actual Social Credit Party was called the Douglas Party. And in New Zealand also had the Social Credit Party based on Douglas's monetary system. And the municipal records show that the city of Edmonton mayor, James Douglas, was at this address. So whether or not C.H. Douglas and the mayor James were related, I couldn't find any family connections. But here's a picture of Major Douglas spending his prosperity dollar in Edmonton in 1930. And there's the reference for that source from the photo archives. So it was, obviously, this is a guy who traveled. He had been earlier in UK in the same year, in 1930. He was in the UK, so he obviously traveled by airplane or boat, maybe. And so he was obviously had resources, and he felt that this was a good invention. And but turned out our postal service intervened and saved everybody some money. There was, somebody did come up with a helioplane, and this is the only from 1949, 20 years later. And even then it didn't, well, it had some tweaks. It could, the way bottom line, the back ailerons could be controlled independently, which is a novelty. And so that's it. If you got any questions, all back just because I bought the one cover, and then I started Googling and helioplane, and the story just mushroomed. And just from one simple cover, not only into the history of the company, I was able to buy a copy of the actual 4-page letter, and then dug into more into Douglas, and found out that this was not just an ordinary person writing an ordinary letter.